Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be making chocolate babkas from the week 4 technical challenge of the 2020 Bake Off. So I'm going to be using Paul Hollywood's recipe, which I will link down below. So here's some of our ingredients that we've got. We've got some eggs, some sugar, AP flour, milk, cocoa powder and chocolate, hazelnuts, yeast, butter, and salt. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure out my 65 grams of hazelnuts. And then I'm gonna lay them out on a baking sheet just so we can toast them and get them a little bit more of a nutty flavor. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those in the oven. After they've toasted for a couple minutes, the skin is a lot easier to take off. So since the recipe calls for blanched hazelnuts, I'm gonna go ahead and quickly take off the skins, but it's super easy. Don't worry guys, take you like a couple minutes. So I'm gonna chop half of the hazelnuts pretty roughly. So we've got some bigger chunks. And then the second half, I'm gonna chop a little bit more finely. So we have some fine chunks and then some thicker chunky ones, some thick with 20 C's chunks. So that'll be for the filling. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just cut off a chunk of my chocolate, which will also be part of the filling here. And I'm just gonna weigh it, make sure it's the correct weight, and it's pretty much perfect. So we're gonna go ahead and make the filling, which is the butter, sugar, and also the chocolate that we just measured out. So you're basically just gonna melt this up. It's super easy, it takes a few minutes at most. Melt it, stir it up, don't let the sugar burn. And make sure you're just stirring constantly so you don't get any crusty bottoms or anything like that. So once the filling is done on the stove, take it off, and then we're gonna go ahead and add the cocoa powder. And this is gonna look chunky at first, but have faith, just keep stirring and the chunk will go away. It's gonna be way smoother if you just keep stirring it. So I'm gonna go ahead and transfer that to another bowl and set it aside to cool because it has a lot of butter in it. Once the butter cools and sets, it's gonna be a lot thicker. So moving on to the dough, I'm gonna put the yeast on one side, and then I'm gonna put my salt and sugar on the other side. And the reason for that is we don't want our salt to touch the yeast just yet. And then I'm gonna make a well in the middle, and that is gonna be for our milk and also our eggs. So this is actually supposed to be done in a stand mixer according to the recipe with a dough hook. However, I do not have one of those, so I'm just doing it in a regular bowl, which is fine because I believe that's how they did it in the technical challenge anyway. Much more of a workout, mind you. So I'm just gonna stir it with a spoon first, just kind of like get the ingredients incorporated. But then inevitably you're gonna have to go in with your hand. It's kind of inescapable. So I just wanna get the dough together, and then after it's sort of not clinging to the sides anymore, I'm gonna add the butter in by little chunks and make sure your butter is soft so you're able to sort of knead it into that dough. So I'm gonna add the butter in, make sure it's incorporated, and then keep on kneading. So you're gonna have to knead like for 1,000 years because after you put the butter in, you're gonna have a really sticky dough. It's gonna stick to everything, but you just need to have faith and keep kneading until you have a nice, shiny, smooth dough like this. And if you stretch it, it shouldn't rip. So that's what we've got going on. So we're gonna start rolling it out so we can go ahead and start forming the bread. So I'm just gonna lightly flour my surface. You don't want too much flour, but just enough so that it will not stick. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure that there's a little bit of flour there. And then I'm gonna start rolling it out. Okay, don't make fun of me. I didn't have a rolling pin, so I covered a vase in saran wrap. But honestly, you can work with anything you have in your house. Like I've used a wine bottle for that before. So just use whatever you have, you know? And you can also stretch the dough out with your hands. I found that this was a really forgiving dough. It won't rip easily or anything like that. Like you can pick it up, twirl it around, do a dance with it, and it won't break. So it's a really nice dough to work with. And I'm just gonna measure it out. In centimeters, it should be 30 by 40. In inches, that's like about 12 by 16. So that's what we've got going on. Once it is generally the right length, it's time to put the chocolate mixture on. So I'm just plopping it like it's hot onto the dough, and then just spreading it out a little bit. It was quite thick, so it was a little bit hard, but you know, workable. So you're actually supposed to leave about 1 centimeter on the sides, but I left about 1 inch. It's okay. And then I'm gonna sprinkle on the hazelnuts, all of them, both the finely chopped ones and the rough ones, onto the chocolate mixture. So this is the inside of the bread that we're gonna be rolling up. So just take the side that's closest to you and start rolling upwards. To be honest, it was very easy to roll. I don't think you will have any issues with this. The dough is, of course, like very forgiving, like I said, and it honestly had a lot of integrity. It didn't break or anything like that, and it felt very thick and very stable. So this really wasn't an issue at all. So once we sort of rolled it out into our log, I'm just gonna clean it up a little bit by cutting off both of the ends, about 2 centimeters on each end, maybe about 1 inch, just to clean it up. And then we're gonna wanna turn our dough 90 degrees, so it's just a stick. And then this is where the braiding comes in, and this is where that beautiful design comes from. So you can slice it down the middle with a knife or a pizza cutter, anything you have. Just slice it down the middle so that you have 2 strands, and make sure that before you start braiding the bread, your strands are facing upwards, because you want that beautiful chocolate hazelnutty spiral to show. So this was pretty simple. It's just a 2-strand braid. So you're basically just, you know, looping one over the other until you've reached the end of the dough. So it wasn't too hard. Just make sure your filling doesn't completely fall out. You know, kind of scoop it back in there if it does fall out. But overall, this was going pretty well. And then every time I folded it over, I kind of squished it together a little bit more so my swirls would be a little bit tighter, so we could have some definition there. And then once you reach the end and you're on your last braid sort of thing, you can just go ahead and tuck those ends right underneath. Totally fine. It'll be hidden. So once we've braided the bread, I'm just going to transfer it over to a prepared baking dish that I've buttered and lined with parchment paper. And I'm just squishing it in there. Make it sure it squishes in there. Don't let it hang over the sides like Lottie did on the show. Hers was not good. Yeah, so just squish it in there. Make sure it fits in the pan. And we're just going to go ahead and let that rise for about 2 hours. After it's risen, you can see it's a little bit taller there. We're gonna go ahead and put it in the oven for 15 minutes at 375. After 15 minutes, I turned it down to about 335-ish and let it be there for about another 25 minutes. While it's cooking, we're gonna go ahead and make the syrup, which goes on top that makes it shiny. So this is just equal parts water and sugar, and you're just gonna stir it until the sugar dissolves, and then let it simmer without touching it for about 5 minutes until you have a sort of syrup going on. Yeah, so then after it comes out, make sure you put the syrup on while it's hot, so you have a really beautiful glaze on top. And I've just drizzled it over the top. Make sure you're not missing any nooks and crannies. Make sure every piece of bread is nice and shiny. So this is what it looks like after we've glazed it. Honestly, even if this doesn't taste good, it looks pretty darn good. Like, it looks impressive. It looks beautiful. Your friends will be impressed. It's just like a really pretty bread, to be honest. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut it open. It was really thick inside. Like, look at that. Super thick, filled with chocolate. It's very dense and very rich. I definitely couldn't eat more than one slice of this, but it's so beautiful, you guys. Like, make it just to impress people, if anything. So pretty. Okay, everyone, the babka is done, and now it's time to give it a taste. It's so warm, so it's good, because the recipe said to serve it warm. So here we have it. It's really, really beautiful on the inside. I think my swirls were not very tight, but Still looks pretty and impressive. Oh my gosh. The bread part is so like sweet and fluffy. It kind of reminds me of challah bread, if you guys know that. But it's pretty good. It's really chocolatey though, so. Yummy. As far as technical goes, for a Great British Bake Off, oh my god. I don't even know how they would be able to do this in the time that they did, because I think it took me like over an hour just to like make the dough and make the filling and put it together. And then it has to rise for like 2 hours or like an hour depending on like the temperature. So I think it's pretty hard, but tastes really good. I don't think like the technique was hard, but I think it was like really time consuming. So, and it was really important to be neat so the filling didn't like completely spew out. But other than that, pretty good. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye.